I'm a female and have loved video games for as long as I can remember. I've played all of the classics as well as many newer games. The story I'm about to tell you takes place in 2014. It was a weekend, and I was at GameStop looking for a few games in particular. If you don't know, GameStop sells many new as well as used games. It was sort of busy, and the GameStop stores are not very big in general, so it was a little tough to navigate around the store. But I made my way over to the games that I was looking for and started browsing. When I found one of the games I really wanted, I was excited. It was one of the used games, and you just never really know of the selection that GameStop will have shortly after I picked it up. A guy that was standing near me asked me if I liked the game, that I was holding the game that I had, was not the most popular, and was known as being pretty underrated. I told him yes, and he went on to say that he had the game too, and it was his favorite. I said that was cool. And he said that he couldn't believe he found somebody else that liked it. Then he asked me if I wanted to play the game with him sometime, and introduced himself as Drew overall. He seemed nice. He didn't come across as strange or anything. But at the same time, I didn't know him at all, but playing a video game online with him was not like going on a date or anything. So I said, yeah, maybe there was an awkward second or two. And then he said, let me give you my number, and then maybe we can game sometime. I said sure, and I was glad that he was just giving me his number, and I wasn't giving him mine. This meant that I didn't have to text him if I didn't want to. But right after he gave me his number, he said, text me really quick, and let me make sure that you got the right number. I didn't want to say no, and make things super awkward. So I said yes, and then I texted him after that. We shook hands, and he walked away to the other side of the store. I kept looking for games for another 20 minutes or so at least. Then I got in line, checked out, and left. I drove back to my apartment and started playing my new games, even though my immediate thoughts of Drew were that he seemed nice. The way our whole conversation went made him seem a little weird to me. I didn't plan on texting him unless he were to text me. Maybe we would game online, and if I didn't like it, I wouldn't have to do it again. Several days went by, and Drew and I didn't text each other at all. Then one night I was gaming in my bedroom. Like I often did, my phone was on my desk about a foot away from me, and I saw a notification go off. I had received a text. I paused my game and looked to see who it was from, and it was Drew. He said, hey, I'm here. Let's game tonight. At first, I thought he meant he was on the game, and I responded, saying that I wasn't playing that game tonight. Then he said, no. I'm right outside your door, let me in. I thought that he was joking when he said that he wanted a game with me. I thought he meant online, not in person. Plus, I had never given him my address. I replied saying, ha ha ha, thinking he had a strange sense of humor, as I did. I got up and walked out of my bedroom and through the living room to my front door. When I looked out of my peephole, sure enough, he was standing right there. I jumped back after seeing him. I looked at my phone and he said, are you going to let me in or what? Then he knocked on the door. I had no plans to let him in. I said, how did you get my address? He didn't respond. I now heard at the front door a louder knock, like he was now pounding on the door. He then shouted for me to let him in now. I was scared. I told him to leave or I was calling the police. He stayed there though for a good 5 minutes. He was just standing there outside my door. He wasn't knocking anymore and he wasn't saying anything. But I kept looking at the people every minute or so, and he was still there finally after what felt like a really long time. He walked away. I texted him to not come back or I would call the police. Luckily he didn't. I never found out how he got my address though. The only thing I can think of is that he followed me all the way home from GameStop, and I probably just didn't notice. I still can't believe that he showed up at my doorstep though, and I'm really glad that I didn't let him in. This happened just a few months ago. I recently got my own house and I live alone. One of my favorite hobbies is playing video games. I have a setup in my bedroom that I'm really proud of, and I spent way more money on it. That I would like to admit my favorite games are Call of Duty, GTA, Madden, and 2K. On this particular night, I was playing Madden. I started playing at about 7 p.m., and I didn't have anything going on the next day, which often meant that I would stay up pretty late. Gaming the night went on, and I took a few breaks to use the bathroom or eat or whatever. But when it was 1 o'clock in the morning, I was still gaming. I had my headphones in, which were noise canceling, and I had them in for the past hour or so. At least I was finally going to be done for the night and go to bed. But as soon as I took my headset off, I immediately heard noises inside of my house. My house has one level in a basement. It's not all that big, and the noises sounded as though they were coming from the living room. Possibly seemed as though somebody was there. I was really confused before I could figure out what was going on, though. It sounded like footsteps were coming closer to my room for a moment. I wasn't quite sure what to do. I had no idea who was inside of my house, or how they had entered. Maybe they were dangerous. I looked around and had absolutely nothing that I could use as a weapon to defend myself. I also didn't think confronting a potential home intruder was a very good idea. That's when I made my mind up to hide. I moved from my chair, turned off my TV, and slid under my bed. Then I moved some of the blankets so they covered the gap between the floor. I heard the footsteps go down the hallway to outside of my bedroom, and then stop after stopping. Whoever was there opened my door. I held my breath and hoped that I was completely out of sight. The door was open for probably 10 seconds and then it closed again. I finally let myself breathe a little. I didn't hear any sounds at all. After a few more seconds, I moved one of my blankets a little. I then saw the feet of what appeared to be a man standing in my room. He wasn't directly facing me, and I couldn't see any more than his ankles, and I quickly moved the blanket back. I didn't know that he was still in my bedroom. I was hoping that he didn't see me. He kept standing there for a really uncomfortable amount of time. My mind was racing. I was thinking of what I could do. Should I charge up from my bed and try to tackle this guy? Should I try to run past him? Ultimately, I decided to remain hidden. I didn't know what he was doing, just standing there in my room. Maybe he knew that I was there, or maybe he didn't. I stayed where I was and did my best to continue to not make any noises. Finally, I heard the guy walking out of the room. It sounded like he went into my guest bedroom next, and I didn't have much in there. I then heard him leave that room, but didn't really hear much else from under my bed. It just kept hidden. Luckily, I did have my phone on me in my pocket, and I felt like it was safe to call the police now. I wish that I had been able to call them sooner, but that definitely would have given my location away when I called. I still whispered over the phone where I was and what was going on. They told me somebody would be there within 10 minutes to my house. When the call ended, I tried to listen close to tell. If the man was still in my house or where he was, I couldn't tell though. I really had no idea, so I remained under my bed. The 10 minutes seemed to go by very slowly, but at last the police got there. They knocked on the front door, and then I heard them enter. I left my bedroom carefully and moved out. I spoke with the police as they searched my house and backyard. Unfortunately, they didn't find anybody. I guess the guy had left. I was told that my front door had been unlocked. Maybe I had forgotten to lock it. None of my windows were broken, and there was no damage to any part of the house. Another strange thing is that nothing at all was stolen or messed up. I don't know what that guy wanted. Unfortunately, I never saw the guy's face either. Just his shoes, really. After that, the police left, and I went to bed. The guy never came back, and it's still a mystery to meet who he was. Last summer, I was playing Call of Duty with some of my friends for some background. I'm an 18-year-old guy, and I live with my parents and sister. My bedroom is where I usually play video games from, and it faces the backyard of our property. This story takes place on a Saturday. A few of my friends were on quad and asked me to join them, so I did. This was at probably 3 or 4 p.m. We played a few games over the course of a couple of hours. I remember that at one point in the game, somebody walked past my window outside. However, I wasn't looking at them, and I was mainly focused on the screen, so I assumed that it was my dad. He often likes to do yard work or stuff around the house on Saturdays. We kept playing, and at about 6 p.m. I got off to take a break. A couple of hours later, at maybe 8 p.m. or so, I got back and my friends were still playing. It was two of the friends that had been on before, and one that was different. This was something we did all the time after school weekends and during the summer, a couple of hours into my second session. It got dark outside. It was maybe 10 p.m. when I noticed a guy walking past my window. Again, I assumed it was my dad because my mind was so focused on the game. After that particular round ended for me, I realized how weird that was. My dad wasn't still outside, at least I didn't think he was. I told my friends that I would be right back, and I left my room and made my way out to the living room. My parents were both in there watching a movie. I asked my dad if he had just been out in the backyard, and he said no. I told him that I thought I saw somebody out there. He then got up and walked out to the back patio and looked around. Our backyard was maybe an acre, and there were a few trees scattered around. My dad turned the backlight on and kept looking around. Then he turned it off and went back inside. He didn't see anybody, and neither did I anymore. Then I asked my dad if he had been outside doing yard work earlier. He told me no, and he hadn't been in the backyard at all. I told him how somebody walked past my window then as well. My dad told me that if I saw the guy again to let him know. Then I went back inside my bedroom and continued the game with my friends. We kept playing until maybe 11 p.m. Then my friends started to get off. I left as well, and I went into the kitchen to get some food. I hung out in the living room for a while and watched some TV with my parents. A little after midnight, they went to bed, and I decided to go to bed as well. I returned to my bedroom and opened the door, but as soon as I did, I saw some guy looking right into my window. The guy had a reddish beard and wore a hooded sweatshirt. His face was right up to my window. After I saw him, he ducked down. I yelled that I saw the guy again. My dad was there within a few seconds, but when we both looked out of my window, we saw whoever had been there running behind a tree in the back part of our yard. We still called the police, and they came out and searched our property. The guy got away, though. I didn't get much sleep that night. I was paranoid that the guy would be back at my window, but he didn't come back. I don't know what he wanted and why he was at my window in particular. He was most likely going to try to break in, but luckily that didn't happen.
This was our story today. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell button to receive all new updates, and like the video. Goodbye.